today. So if I go in there to lecture 1, I now have an HTML directory, and inside of here I have a few examples, prefabbed examples, all of which are on the course's website. In the future, because Harvard Hall doesn't have the best or any Wi-Fi, we'll try to post this stuff as early as possible over the weekend, and I'll do my best so that if you want, you can download it in advance and actually have it to play with during class. There are PDFs available online as well. So let me just go into a very simple example in the CS164 the HTML5 directory here. And let me go ahead and open up, let's say, HTML5.html. So I'm using gedit here, which is a cheap little text editor with which some of you are familiar. And here we go. Here is a very simple HTML5 web page with some standard Latin text. So let's just go ahead and pull this up. So this is in that HTML5 directory. What I'm going to do is open up Chrome inside of the appliance, though you can configure your Mac or PC to allow you to use your own browser client side. And I'm going to go to http://lecture1 enter. And I don't have permission to access / on this server. So this is just a web server misconfiguration detail. And this probably boils down to what little Linux command to fix this. So some kind of chmod error. So let's just do a quick sanity check. ls - whoops, that's a lot of files. Let's see. So my home directory is world executable. That's good because that's necessary. The vhost directory is world executable and readable as per the R's and X's over there. Let me go into vhosts here. OK, so this one's broken. So this needs to be like 711, if you recall your web development experience. Let's go into lecture 1 now. This seems to be messed up. So in one fell swoop, I'm just going to go ahead and chmod everything a little excessively. A plus RX means give everyone read and, if it supplies, executability permission. And this is just a quick and dirty way of exposing everything for the sake of class. But in a real server, we would lock some of this stuff down. So let me now go back to my browser and reload, and voila. So to be clear, and this is the mental model you should have throughout the semester, the appliance is, yes, a computer, but it's also a server running software, web server software, database software. So you're using, I'm using at the moment, a browser to connect to the appliance inside of the appliance, because it is both client and server, if you will. All right, so let's go into HTML5. Let's go to HTML5, and voila. So there is a very nice and simple and Latin-based website. But let's actually now pull this up in a mobile context. So for this, I could use my actual phone and pass it around, or we can just pull up a simulator here. So let me go ahead and close harvard.edu. Let me go back to the directory that I prepped in advance here. Let me go into lecture 1, HTML. HTML5, and finally, OK, useless, right? So horrible, horrible, horrible mobile website. So how do we fix this? And how do you start designing with these kinds of contexts in mind? Well, it's actually rendering quite like a desktop browser, right? It is zoomed out to be sort of normal browser dimensions, but normal browser dimensions isn't quite appropriate here. So it turns out with the mobile web, and these are just very easy new features of HTML, some of them specific to Apple in this case, that allow you to actually tell the browser upon downloading this HTML that, you know what, you need to actually behave a little bit differently from usual. So the viewport. The viewport refers to like the rectangular space for which you have all control in terms of the user's experience. And realize that there's going to be a few meta tags and attributes you can use in HTML5 in this mobile context to specify, among other things, things like width. And we can do this very simple. We can fix this very easily, in fact, by a very simple fix here. Let me go back to, let's say, gedit. Let me go ahead and open up devicewidth.html, which is literally copied and pasted from the previous demo, but I added one thing. So how do you make a website mobile friendly, mobile ready, and make it be readable? So you have a little meta tag. Viewport content width equals device width. This is a little messy, dare say, but device width is like a special global HTML-like variable that's just defined by the browser to be 320 pixels, 480 pixels, whatever is applicable to the device. So the end result should be, hopefully, a better experience. So I'm going to go back in my Chrome browser, pull up device width, and there's no material difference. In fact, the markup is otherwise the same except for that meta tag. But if I go back to my Mac or my phone in my pocket and pull up this time the file that is called devicewidth.html, now at least we're getting somewhere. OK, so really just basic building blocks here that we'll very quickly start taking for granted. But it's these little things that make websites sort of optimized for mobile devices. How about a whirlwind tour of some other things that you can do with HTML so we can start taking these features for granted? So you have, and these are all prefixed with Apple's identifier. So you can specify in HTML markup that my mobile website, HTML, CSS, and whatnot, I want to be bookmarkable on a user's desktop in such a way that when they click that icon that says save to home screen, when they then click that icon thereafter, they should not see the address bar. It should actually look and kind of feel like an actual mobile app. How do you do that? You literally copy and paste this into the top of your file, and it will allow a user to bookmark your page more cleanly. You can do simple, sexy little things. If you don't like the gray bar that's usually at the top of the phone that shows what your signal strength is and clock, you can make it black with something like this. And all of at the bottom of these slides, you can't quite see it on this projector, there's the URL for the canonical documentation for finding these kinds of things out. So what about a custom icon? You can do that by simply specifying the location of a ping that the phone should use to actually store on the home screen. You can do pre-compose. So this is, again, we won't spend much time on these details, but a normal image is just an image that Apple will then add some sexy glossy look to it. But if you would like to do that yourself in Photoshop, pre-composed means you made it look sexy yourself. It should not do any special rendering of that icon. If your application is not very well designed or is very slow to actually load up because there's a lot of data or JavaScript or the like, well, you can specify that even this mobile web app, just this website, should first display whatever image you have in mind there. So let's actually see these in action and what we can do here. So let me go back to the appliance. Let me go into another file. Let's call it inputs.html, just to see some features that aren't actually mobile specific. They're becoming more trendy in the actual world of just web development, but they're making things more accessible for users. They're making things more user friendly. And in particular, we have new attributes on the input element like this: auto capitalize, auto complete, auto correct, many of which are annoying when the user is trying to type something in, placeholder, and then type. So you might recall from 50 or whenever you learned HTML that you have type equals text, type equals checkbox. In HTML5, you have fancy features like type equals email, type equals URL. Who cares? Like, why isn't an email text? Isn't a URL text? Like, what's the value add here? So it's actually not verification. Could be used for that purpose, but yeah, it's for the keyboard. So this is more about user experience. So if I go and pull up in, let's say, the simulator, this file here, inputs.html, not only do the fields look pretty nice, so they have the little gray placeholder text, email, and URL. Notice that if I, with my finger, or in this case the simulator, click on email, I get this keyboard here. Notice the @ sign. If I instead click on the URL, notice that it changes. So these are the little things, frankly, that will speak to the idea of user experience. And again, we'll spend more time fleshing out these details later on. But realize that you have these building blocks from day one. What else can we do? Well, we have a couple of other things here. Let me go back here. Let me pull up this example here. So Tommy could not be with us here today. But if anytime I do live demos with my phone, it costs me money. Let's see. Let me go in here. Let's go into parent directory. If you're wondering how this demo is going to end, it's going to end with a phone call. All right, so just so you can see what this actually looks like and to give me an excuse for having set up this camera here. All right, so there's a real mobile device. And that's the same web page we just looked at in the simulator. I'm going to click that. So this is how you trigger things like this. So if you've ever used Yelp or Google or whatnot and you want to trigger a call, it's just by using a different anchor tag, or rather a prefix of the href.
Oh?
Hi, Tommy. This is Computer Science 164.
Hi.
Where are you now?
Matter.
Oh, so you didn't. So you're not in class.
It's a long story.
All right. Well, we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. So it works. So SMSs tend to get me in trouble in demos, so we won't do that one. But similarly, Can you do SMS? And this all boils down to, much like in normal HTML, you have href equals quote unquote mail to colon, and then you can trigger the opening of an email client. The idea here is the same too. You can simply use tel colon or SMS colon so that the end result is as simple as saying, in the telephone case, something like this. So this is how we're making these things possible in a mobile context. It's as easy as that. And if you actually read through the W3C's recommendation, this is a group that we might make mention of from time to time. There is a standards body in the world known as the World Wide Web Consortium that over time rolls out new standards like HTML5, XHTML, and a whole range of others. And so if you're ever looking for an authoritative definition or answer as to whether something is supported in a language like HTML, the thing to Google is W3C recommendation, and you can actually get the grammar, if you've taken 121 or a similar course, that actually prescribes what these markup languages should look like formally. So that's not to say everyone follows them. Case in point, all of the things prefixed with Apple I mentioned a moment ago are very Apple specific. So everyone keeps going their own direction anyway. All right, what about this feature of m.harvard.edu or harvard.edu, whereby it redirects apparently to this, but like 5 seconds too late? So upon visiting www.something.com, how might the browser or server realize that, wait a minute, this is a mobile device. Let me show the user something else. Yeah, so you can look at the user agent field. So you might recall sniffing HTTP traffic with a tool like Firebug or Chrome or the like, and you can actually see that behind the scenes, not only do you send messages like get index.html or post to something.php, there's also a bunch of HTTP headers that say what browser you're using, what OS you're using, what domain name you just visited, whether your browser supports compression, and a whole bunch of more arcane features. So this is the user agent string that, as of the version of iOS running on my iPhone as of last night, actually sends. Anytime I visit a website on the whole internet, this information is divulged about me. So it's not particularly super secret, but it does tell a little something about you. Now, what's the upside for the server? Well, this is a horrific-looking string. For some reason, years ago, the world just decided to come up with crazy-looking user agent strings like this. And it changes every time Apple or Google releases a new browser. The version number or something in that string changes. So what does this mean? Well, server-side, as Aaron said, you can actually just detect these kinds of things, right? You can use regular expressions, pattern matching more generally, and just figure out that, a user whose browser's just sent me this is apparently running, an iPhone, right? But yet it says Mac OS X, and yet it also mentions Gecko, which is a throwback to earlier browsers. So long story short, parsing these things is kind of a pain, right? You can very simply grep through it or search through it with like preg match in the world of PHP, and you can infer with some probability what it is. And so you could do something simple like this. So in PHP, if the regular expression iPad or iPhone or iPod matches what's in the HTTP user agent string, then what can you do? Well, server side, you can make the decision then, not 5 seconds later, to redirect the user to the mobile version of the website, which maybe is m.example.com or something else, before the user starts seeing the entirety of harvard.edu downloading. So by contrast, what trick was harvard.edu using apparently? Yeah. Yeah, so probably JavaScript, right? Anytime something happens in a browser that did not happen instantly, but rather after the page was downloaded, probably means it was client-side driven, and we can actually see as much. Let me go over to, in my normal browser, harvard.edu. We have a hunch that it is, in fact, JavaScript based. So let me go ahead and view page source. I don't know what the offending file is going to be, but let me just search for .js. So that's Google Analytics, so that's probably not it. That's a comment. That's something. That's Twitter. That's jQuery. This is curious. Check useragent.js. So apparently harvard.edu is loading this JavaScript. Then it's executing check useragent, which is presumably a function inside of this file. So let's see what this is. Check useragent. And indeed, notice what they're doing. It's actually a little crazy. So check useragent is called. And then it's checking some query string. But ... My eyes have gravitated immediately to this jQuery call. Ajax means go make another HTTP request. So the curious thing, and I was delighted to find this as a lecture example, is that you visit www.harvard.edu in your mobile device. It downloads all the files and GIFs and JPEGs and JavaScript files. It then executes this function. It then sends a message back to the server and says, hey, by the way, what browser is this user running? Then it gets a response, apparently, to that success handler function. And it then calls, let's see, redirect mobile, passing in platform as an argument. So let's scroll down here. And there is the if condition that could have been several steps earlier in this process, checking, are you on an iPhone? And if so, what does it do? Window.location equals m.harvard.edu. So don't do it this way. Okay? There's many other ways to do this. And the irony is, I think the site is probably doing something quite smart, which is dynamically querying what kind of device is this.